It is a little bit before 4 o'clock at the time I am filming this, meaning the trade deadline has officially come and gone. And as per usual, there were teams that made some good decisions, and there were teams that made some very questionable decisions. And I feel like the dust at this point has pretty much settled, and I don't really think that there's going to be a last second monster blockbuster trade. So that would mean that the NHL's current landscape is going to remain how it is. Now, obviously, the big topic with the trade deadline is the winners and the losers, and that's exactly what we're going to be talking about today. Who won, who lost. I have picked three winners and losers in no particular order, and we're going to be starting off by talking about the losers of this year's trade deadline. And we're going to start off by talking about the Edmonton Oilers. The Oilers, yes, they did make their fair share of moves, bringing in Connor Murphy, bringing in Cale Dach, bringing in Jason Dickinson. Those are all fine moves. However, your one biggest hole that you needed to fix was goaltending, and you did not fix that. And with the names that were rumored to be out there, Jordan Binnington, Sergei Bobrovsky, I feel like there could have been an opportunity for them to address that need. And I'm sorry, but you just can't convince me that Edmonton is very confident heading into the playoffs with their current goaltending. They thought that Tristan Jarry and Connor Ingram were going to be their answers in net, and they just haven't been at all. So while the moves that Edmonton did make were okay moves, again, their biggest need they didn't do anything about. They're still rolling into the playoffs with Tristan Jarry and Connor Ingram. And again, I don't care if you have Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. If you don't have good goaltending in the playoffs, you're not going to win. The next loser that I have is the Montreal Canadiens. Now, Montreal, in my opinion, did not do enough. I really thought that this deadline was a good opportunity for Montreal to really take that next step. And obviously, I know Montreal is still a very young team, and they still have a lot of time left to go in this plan that they have. But again, there comes a time where you have to take that next step, and I just don't know if they did it with this deadline. Bringing in Philip Deneau is an okay choice. Maybe he has a resurgence, maybe he doesn't. He is a former player of Montreal that had success playing in Montreal, so who really knows if he has that resurgence or not? But again, similar to what I talked about with Edmonton, one of Montreal's biggest needs was goaltending, and they didn't address that at all. Now, it's no secret that Sam Montembeault and Jakub Dobeš have not had good seasons at all. But we do know that they are capable of playing in the NHL. We saw it last year. Both of them had pretty good seasons last year. For whatever reason this year, it just hasn't clicked. So while I'm not necessarily as concerned with them as I would be with Edmonton, I still think that bringing in another goaltender, I feel like would have really been the big move for Montreal to really get done. For me, the bigger move for Montreal would have been adding in a goaltender. And again, we talked about Jordan Bennington, we talked about Sergei Bobrovsky possibly being available, and it obviously just did not materialize. But my biggest loser for this year's trade deadline is the Carolina Hurricanes. Carolina, who usually comes into the trade deadline and usually puts all their chips onto the table, they did not make a whole lot of noise this year, only making one trade, and that was for Nick Deslauriers. Now, that is not a disrespect to Nick Deslauriers at all, considering he could legitimately beat me up with probably his pinky finger. But again, I just don't think it was enough for Carolina to get over the hump in the playoffs. And look, the story has been the same with the Carolina Hurricanes for a few seasons now. Great in the regular season, but they can't get it done in the playoffs. And nothing is really going to change for Carolina until they can get into the playoffs and make some serious noise. And I'm not saying that they still don't have a very good team, because they do, but adding in someone like a Vinny Trocheck, who was rumored to be in the mix for Carolina, obviously the Rangers' ask for Trocheck was just simply too high for any team to make that move, considering Trocheck stayed in New York. But again, I just don't feel like they did enough to really get them over the edge come playoff time. And again, for a team that at this point is pretty much based on what they do in the playoffs, I think it could lead to some very interesting decisions if the playoffs don't go as planned for Carolina this year. And that takes us on to the winners. And we're going to start off by talking about the Minnesota Wild as a winner for this year's deadline. Obviously, the big deal that was made prior to the deadline was Quinn Hughes. Bringing a guy in like that, you're obviously going to be talked about as a winner. But even today on the deadline, bringing in guys like Bobby Brink and Nick Foligno, I think Bobby Brink is a fantastic ad. As someone who's a Penguins fan and has watched Pittsburgh and Philly for many, many years now, I have seen quite a few games of Bobby Brink, and he really, really impresses me sometimes. So I think that that Bobby Brink trade could end up being a very, very nice and sneaky one for Minnesota to make. You have a guy who was born and raised in Minnesota coming back and playing for his home team, and that obviously plays a lot into it too. Then you have Nick Foligno, and obviously no one's assuming that Nick Foligno is going to come in and single-handedly change the entire outlook for the Minnesota Wild. However, there is just a feel good story to it. Obviously, the Foligno brothers being reunited and being able to play together in the NHL is obviously something that is always going to get a lot of attention. And again, it's just a really feel good story. And they're also getting a guy in Nick Foligno who has been a captain at not just one, but several different NHL teams. So while obviously the big move for Minnesota was Quinn Hughes, I think they also had a very sneaky trade deadline, too. The next winner that I have is the Buffalo Sabres. And while the big talk was them possibly getting Colton Parenko, that obviously didn't materialize. So they ended up going out and getting two guys from Winnipeg in Logan Stanley and Luke Shen. Adding those two monsters into what is already a monstrous defense, I think really, really makes Buffalo a scary team heading into the playoffs. A team that is already playing some of, if not the best hockey in the entire NHL right now. And even though they did not end up getting Colton Parenko, again, I still think that bringing in Stanley and Shen is a very, very good move. That decor is still very, very good. And again, with a team that's playing already at a high level, bringing in two other guys to really solidify that defense, I thought was a brilliant move from Buffalo. And then I have the St. Louis Blues. And I feel like a lot of the trade deadline talk was surrounding the St. Louis Blues, mainly around guys like Robert Thomas, Jordan Kyrou, and Colton Parenko, and you could also add Jordan Binnington into that mix as well. And while we saw none of those guys get moved, the moves that St. Louis did make, they got a really, really good return back for both of them. The big one being trading Braden Shen to the New York Islanders for a first round pick, a third round pick, a goalie prospect, and Jonathan Drouin. Now, that is a very, very good haul for someone who, yes, he was your captain, and yes, he was a leader in your locker room, but he's also getting up there in age, and St. Louis is in a place where they want to get a little bit younger. And they also capitalize on Justin Falk having a resurgent season, trading him to Detroit for a first, a third, and Justin Hall. Again, what they got for both Shen and Falk, I think, are absolutely brilliant moves from St. Louis. And when you take a look at the guys that they didn't trade away, Robert Thomas is still 26 years old. Jordan Kyrou is still 27 years old. They're not old guys by any stretch of the imagination. I really, really liked the deals that they were able to swing for Braden Shen and Justin Falk and bringing in all those draft picks. And there were some other teams that were kind of on the bubble. I thought Detroit was a team that I felt like could have made a little bit more noise, but bringing in Justin Falk, I think it kind of put them in a bit of a tweener spot because I was going to put them as one of the losers. My big thing with Detroit is Justin Falk going to be enough? I don't necessarily know, but at the very least, Detroit was able to do something. Another team that I kind of have on the bubble is the Vegas Golden Knights. And Vegas is, again, another team that usually comes in to the trade deadline and puts all their chips on the table. And we did already kind of see them make that big splash bringing in Rasmus Anderson. And I am a very, very big Rasmus Anderson fan, so I couldn't quite put them into the loser category because of that move. But again, what I did talk about with Montreal and Edmonton, Vegas's biggest hole right now is goaltending. But yes, they did bring in Rasmus Anderson, which is a very nice piece. They didn't address the goaltending situation. So, this is where I want to hear from you guys. Let me know who your biggest winners are, and let me know who your biggest losers are of this year's NHL trade deadline. As always, let me know your thoughts and opinions down below in the comment section. And while you're down there, swing by the description and click the Linktree link. That is the only link in the description for a reason. That is because it'll take you to all of the social media platforms for this channel. Currently, right now, we are only on Instagram and X, and I will say the Instagram page does get a little more tender love and care, because that is how this entire page started in the first place. But again, if you enjoy these videos and you are looking for some extra content, again, Linktree link in the description, it'll take you to wherever you want to go. So with all that said and finally done, that is going to do it for this video here. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did enjoy it, hit the like button. If you really enjoyed it, hit the subscribe button. Again, both are free. Both really help out the channel a lot. And as always, stay tuned for more Jersey and hockey content coming in the future. We'll see you next time.